All right, so get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into something a little different.
Oh, this is going to be good.
We're looking at English slang, specifically how native speakers gossip. We got this YouTube video from a listener. It's actually meant to teach English,
Yeah.
but the story it uses takes a pretty wild turn.
Really?
Yeah, it surprised even me.
Yeah.
You want to give us a little background on the video?
Sure. It's from a website called EnglishPod.com.
I've heard of them.
The hosts are Marco and Erica, and they focus on teaching useful vocabulary, the kind you need for everyday conversations, not just formal stuff.
So not like what you'd find in a textbook.
Exactly. They want people to sound natural when they speak.
And for this particular episode, they chose some pretty interesting words like weird, bad feeling, kicked out,
Oh, I see where this is going.
even creeped me out and scared the heck out of me.
Those are definitely colorful.
Right. And to demonstrate how these words are used, they created a dialogue between two housewives gossiping about their new neighbor.
That's smart. Putting the vocabulary into a real conversation like that gives it context.
It does. If you just see kicked out in a vocabulary list, it could mean kicked out of a bar or kicked out of bed,
Yeah, exactly. It helps you understand the nuances, so you can sound more natural when you speak.
And the examples they use to illustrate the words are actually pretty funny.
Wait.
Well, like being kicked out of bed by your spouse because you're snoring. Something I'm sure none of us have ever experienced.
Definitely not. Haha. But on a serious note, using those kind of real-life examples also helps you grasp the emotional weight behind the words.
That's true.
Like, saying you have a bad feeling about someone is a lot stronger than just saying they seem strange.
Right. It's like a gut instinct, like something's just off.
Exactly.
And speaking of off, things get really interesting with their example of creeped out. Erica actually shares her personal fear of clowns.
I mean, I get it. Clowns can be terrifying.
Right. But in the context of their dialogue, creeped out refers to the new neighbor, Armand. He's been acting strangely, and it's starting to make the housewives feel uneasy,
I can see why.
especially because they see a coffin-shaped box delivered to his house.
Whoa. Okay, that's creepy.
Right. And then he invites them over for dinner.
What?
Yep, and that's where the dialogue ends.
Oh, come on.
I know, right? They leave you hanging with so many questions, like what's in the box? What's Armand's deal? Is he dangerous?
That's such a good way to teach, though.
It is. Leaving it on a cliffhanger like that really makes you want to keep learning.
It makes you curious.
It does. And to encourage that, Marco and Erica tell viewers to check out EnglishPod.com for more stories and lessons.
Smart.
They even mention this Story of the Week contest where listeners can submit their own stories.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a great way to get people involved in practicing their English.
Absolutely. So, are we going to find out what happened with Armand?
Well, not exactly.
Nope.
To make things even more suspenseful, Erica decides to share a true story from her own childhood.
No way.
Yeah, it's equally chilling. She talks about growing up in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business. Perfect for gossip, right?
Of course. What was the story about?
Okay, so there was this man who owned a car scrapyard in her town.
The scrapyard.
Yeah, and then one day, his wife just disappears.
Oh, wow.
And years later, the police show up and start digging up the scrapyard.
What? That's crazy.
Right, you're immediately thinking, are they going to find the missing wife?
Of course.
But just as you're on the edge of your seat, Erica says that she moved away before the investigation was finished.
Oh, no. So we never find out what happened.
Nope. We're left with another unresolved ending.
Wow, they really know how to keep you hooked. But the scripted dialogue and Erica's personal story really highlight how powerful storytelling is for language learning.
I agree.
It's way more engaging than just memorizing lists of words.
Right. It's like you're right there with the characters experiencing everything they're feeling. And that makes the language come alive.
Exactly. Instead of just reading definitions, you're absorbing the language in a much more natural way.
And the fact that both stories were left unfinished, well, that just adds to the effect.
Definitely. It keeps you thinking about the vocabulary and wanting to learn more, almost like your brain is working overtime to fill in the gaps.
It's a much more effective way to learn than just passively reading a textbook, that's for sure.
Couldn't agree more.
So for anyone out there learning English, take note. Don't just rely on textbooks. Seek out authentic materials that expose you to the nuances of everyday speech, like this English Pod video.
Great advice.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to write your own suspenseful tale. In English, of course.
Now, before we get too deep into the art of storytelling and its role in language learning, I'm curious about something.
What's that?
What struck you most about these stories? Did any of the words or situations particularly resonate with you?
And hey, maybe you even have a creepy neighbor story of your own.
Oh, I bet some of our listeners do.
Because after hearing Erica's, I'm definitely feeling a little spooked. But don't worry, we'll keep the lights on for the rest of this deep dive. Join us in part 2 as we unpack the power of storytelling and how it can transform your language learning journey.
This is going to be good.
It is.
Welcome back. Before we move on, I think we should talk about why those unfinished stories from the English Pod video were so captivating.
Yeah, it's true. They totally left us hanging.
Yeah.
But I wonder why that technique works so well.
Well, suspense is powerful.
It is.
It creates anticipation, makes you crave that resolution. It's like why we get hooked on mysteries or TV shows with cliffhangers.
Right, and that's basically what Erica and Marco did in that video, especially with that whole mysterious coffin-shaped box thing. Like, what was in there?
Exactly. And that desire to know what happens next, it actually helps us learn.
Really?
Yeah, when we're really engaged with the material, our brains are more likely to remember the information.
So it's like the suspense creates this puzzle we're trying to solve, and the vocabulary becomes the clues.
Exactly. Now, imagine applying this to your own language learning. Instead of just going through vocabulary lists, try using those words to create suspenseful stories.
Oh, that's a cool idea. So, like, instead of just reading a story, you're creating one yourself.
Right. You could even retell stories you already know, like fairy tales or movie plots, but add your own twists and turns to make them more exciting.
And don't be afraid to get creative.
Exactly. You can write about whatever interests you, time travel, everyday situations, but with a little mystery thrown in.
The important thing is to make it fun.
Definitely. The more you enjoy it, the more likely you are to keep practicing. And speaking of engaging stories, I thought Erica's personal anecdote about the missing wife and the scrapyard investigation, wow, that was a perfect example of how a well-told story can really capture an audience.
It was. Even though we never got the ending, just the story itself was so interesting.
Right. And that's the thing about a good mystery. It really taps into that curiosity we all have.
That need to understand what we don't know.
Exactly. We naturally try to fill in the blanks, come up with our own explanations. And from a language learning perspective, that's a fantastic exercise.
It is. It forces you to think critically, get creative, use the vocabulary and grammar you've learned to come up with your own theories and scenarios.
Exactly. And even if you never find out the real ending, just the process of engaging with the story on that level helps solidify the language in your mind.
It's like the story becomes a framework for your learning, almost like mental scaffolding, helping you organize the information.
Exactly. And it also shows how important the social aspect of language learning is. We don't just learn in isolation, it's about communicating with others.
That's so true. And stories are great for that. They let us share experiences, connect with others, and learn from each other.
Think about how much we use stories in everyday life.
All the time.
We use them to make people laugh, to teach, to share information, just to connect with each other.
It's like a universal language. It crosses cultural boundaries. We all have stories to tell. And those stories can teach and inspire and entertain.
And when we use stories to learn a new language, we're not just learning vocabulary and grammar. We're getting insights into the culture of the people who speak that language.
It's like you get a glimpse into how they think. You start to understand their humor, their values, their view of the world.
And that's what makes language learning so much more than just memorizing rules.
Also,
It's about connecting with another culture on a deeper, more meaningful level.
I couldn't agree more. So for everyone out there who's learning English or any other language, embrace the power of stories.
Don't just focus on the technical stuff.
Immerse yourself in the narratives. Let them take you to new worlds.
Because it's through stories that we connect with each other and the languages we speak.
So true. And who knows, maybe one day you'll be sharing your own suspenseful tales with the world, inspiring others to learn and grow through stories. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a break here. In part 3, we'll give you some practical tips and techniques for using storytelling to enhance your language learning.
Stay tuned. It'll be worth it.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been talking about using storytelling to boost your English skills. And I actually have some tips to share on how you can do just that.
Oh, perfect.
It's really not as hard as it sounds.
I agree.
You don't have to be, some amazing author or anything.
Right.
One really easy place to start is by retelling a story you already know well. It could be a favorite story from when you were a kid, or the plot of a movie, or even, just something funny that happened to you today.
Yeah, I like that.
The key is to focus on using English to tell it. Think about sentence structure, verb tenses, make sure the story flows naturally. And as you get more comfortable, you can add your own details, your own observations.
Because it helps with active recall, which is so much more effective than just kind of passively absorbing information.
Exactly. And you can even record yourself while you're telling the story. Then listen back and see if there are any areas you want to improve.
That's a good idea.
Another technique that I find really helpful is to use storytelling prompts. You can find them online or in language learning workbooks. There are tons out there. And they can be great for, like, sparking your creativity and getting you thinking in English.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
So, for example, a prompt could be something like, describe a time you were surprised, or tell a story about a lost object.
I like those.
The goal isn't to write, like, a perfect story.
It's about practice.
It's just about practicing, getting those creative juices flowing, and finding ways to express yourself in English.
Absolutely. And if you're feeling really adventurous, you can even try writing your own completely original stories.
Ooh.
Start small, maybe with a paragraph or two, and then gradually make them longer and more complex.
And hey, remember that English pod contest we were talking
Oh,
about?
yeah, the story of the week.
That could be a great way to, motivate yourself to actually write and share your stories with others.
Definitely. It'd be fun to enter that.
Totally. And besides the language benefits, storytelling has so many other rewards too,
Like,
It helps you connect with other people, share experiences, build empathy.
it helps you understand each other better.
Right. When you tell a story, you're inviting someone into your world.
Right.
You're letting them see things from your perspective. And that helps you connect on a much deeper level.
It's such a powerful way to communicate.
It really is. And it goes beyond just language and culture.
Exactly. We all have stories.
We do.
And those stories have the power to teach us things, inspire us, entertain us.
So, to everyone listening, I encourage you to embrace the power of storytelling. Don't be afraid to share your stories, to experiment with the language, and to connect with other people through narratives.
It's worth it.
It is. Every story matters, and every voice deserves to be heard.
Your perspective is valuable.
It is. Sharing your stories can really enrich your life and the lives of others. Keep learning, keep sharing, and keep diving deep into the world of language and storytelling.
We hope this deep dive has given you some ideas on how to use storytelling to boost your language skills.
And until next time.
Happy story